Monroe is more than my hometown. It's where I grew up, met my best friends, met the love of my life. It's where I chose to raise my kids and build my life. My name's Cory Kundert, and this is my hometown story. My hometown story started on a small gravel road south of Monroe called Kundert Road. It was named after my family. They moved a house there, and nobody had the name Kundert Road, so they decided to call it Kundert Road. Only 2 houses on that entire road. But it's a really awesome place. I mean, I grew up in between some farmland. I had a really nice creek, the Honey Creek, that ran right next to the road. Had so many memories of growing up there, from running and biking up the gravel road to walking my dog to throwing footballs and baseballs and all that stuff around the yard as a kid, and just such a great place to grow up. Going under the bridge and skipping some rocks and heading up to the neighbor's house and playing on their farm, and so many memories of growing up in the country. I wouldn't trade it for a single thing. My upbringing out in the country was one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced. My parents, within the last year, have sold their house in the country and moved to town, and I'm grateful that they're in town. And life is much easier when you're a couple minutes away from the store versus a 10-minute drive. But I know they wouldn't trade it for the world either. Having lived out in the country for over 40 years, it was a tough thing for them to do, to move to town. And I know they miss it, but certainly life is much easier for them these days. But for me, being able to grow up and have close relationships with people around me in the country was really great. I know I would have got it in town. Monroe has such a tight-knit community. I know I would have got that same experience in town. But there was something about, hopping on the bus and riding that. We were the second to last stop on the bus, so spent a lot of time on there as a kid, and met a lot of people through that, and just being around the country and the farms around here. Just so much fun to be able to live in the country and just have that lifestyle. Growing up, I was an athlete, a 3-sport athlete. I wrestled, I played football and baseball, and I had so much pride in putting that Monroe jersey or singlet on all the time. I mean, I remember growing up and watching all these wrestlers that were older than me. They're making it to state, and we'd go to dual meets all the time and watch the intensity in the gym at the Monroe High School and see the passion that these kids are putting through to the sport they love. And honestly, that's probably where I got my passion for the sport of wrestling, was as a young kid going to the gym in Monroe High School and seeing these kids lay it on the line and represent their school with so much pride. Monroe is a special place. I don't think I would have wanted to grow up anywhere else. I think for me, the small, tight-knit community of Monroe rallies around sports and in the school, especially, whether it's athletic event or a play or really anything in the community. Our community really brings it together and supports as much as possible. It's such a great community. I'm so proud that I was able to grow up here. Like I said, I wrestled. I played football and baseball for most of my life. I started when I was about 6 years old with all those sports and competed all the way through high school. I stopped after my senior year of high school. I was really burned out in sports, but honestly, being able to put on those shoulder pads, and I wore number 10 in high school for football, being able to do that was so incredible. I remember the specific conversation I had with Coach Witt when I got called up to varsity my freshman year. I was actually at home. I think I fell asleep on the couch or something, and my parents come running down and say, "Hey, Coach Witt's on the phone for you." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." I was a freshman. I had just moved up to JV I think it was that week. And I get on the phone, said, "Hey, Coach Witt, how you doing?" He said, "We'd like you to come up to varsity and be on the team with us." And, it was one of those moments where I was shocked. I mean, just this freshman who just got moved up to JV. I was a quarterback at the time, and just really excited for the opportunity to head up to varsity. And for me, it was, I was a backup. I wasn't going to see the field freshman year, other than garbage time at the end of the game. And even still, I remember getting called up, and I think this was even before I got officially added to the varsity roster. We had a scrimmage, and they pulled me over to the scrimmage and did some reps on varsity, and just being able to hang out with the guys on the sidelines. They fully embraced me as a freshman coming onto the team, and met a lot of great people through that I never would have if I wouldn't have had the experience of suiting up on Friday nights under the lights on TR Holyoke Field. Our teams in high school were never great. One of those years we got really close to making the playoffs, but we didn't make it. We were one game away from making it. But the memories I have of getting under center on that field, dropping back to pass, or I played some linebacker and defensive line, and I punted. I played some fullback. I was all over the field. Never that great. Feel like I had a lot of potential in a lot of these sports that I never really lived up to, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm sitting here 12 years after I graduated high school, thinking back about the fond memories I had of competing for Monroe High School, and it was just phenomenal, just to look back and see and think about the crowds we used to bring to the high school field. I know there's a lot more stadiums we'd go to that had a lot of cheering fans and whatnot, but there was always something special looking up in the stands and seeing your friends and family up there, and seeing me, growing up. My dad and brother and I used to go to football games all the time, and I'd sit in the stands and watch the Monroe athletes out there, and dreaming that was going to be me someday. And I got that chance. I got the chance to suit up on varsity for 4 years. Freshman year, I got in a couple different times and completed a couple passes here and there. Sophomore year, same kind of thing. I played JV and suited up for varsity, and ended up playing a lot my last game of my sophomore year, and I did not have a good game. I think I was 3 for 7 with 3 interceptions. It wasn't pretty, but it was a really good experience for me. And then coming into junior year, I was actually changing positions, still playing quarterback, but I was a backup quarterback, and I moved to linebacker. I played a lot of outside linebacker in the preseason camp, and the Wednesday before our first game, I got playing scout team defense. Actually, got injured, hurt my knee, and missed the first 6 weeks of the season. And coming back, I had an MCL injury. I didn't have very good lateral movement. And playing linebacker, you need a lot of good lateral movement. So came back and didn't play a whole lot. Tough, being that I was up on varsity for the first 2 years and really hoping to make an impact my junior year, and ended up not seeing the field much that year. And then coming around senior year, I ended up moving to defensive line, and I played most of the year at defensive end and nose tackle, and I punted, pretty solid punter in high school. Played some quarterback too. I played half a game and had 150 yards and a couple touchdowns, and a whole lot of fun that game, playing quarterback. But honestly, we were never a really great football team when I was in high school. Never sniffed the playoffs, but honestly had a lot of fun memories from playing on TR Holyoke Field and playing at all these other fields that we played at in high school. Played against some guys that ended up playing Division I football, and just had a really, really great experience throughout that. There are some things I wish that would have gone a little bit different in my high school football career. Wish I would have had some different opportunities. But, it is what it is. I'm sitting here 12 years later rambling on about my high school football career, and, honestly, like, it was a blast to be able to represent Monroe High School, and just had a lot of fun, met a lot of great people, and some of my best friends I played football with on that field. Switching over to wrestling, I was a 4-year starter for wrestling in high school. My freshman year, I was 189 and 215, and I weighed about 182 pounds. And my senior year, or my freshman year, I was wrestling a lot of 215 pounders who are grown men. Let's be honest; those guys are big guys who matured, and I was not mature enough at the time to stack up against those guys. So I had a really rough freshman year. I went 8-18, and I think 4 of my wins were forfeits. So that tells you I had a couple solid wins there, but pretty rough going my freshman year. And coming off a fairly decent youth career, it was a little challenging to go up and down there. I did wrestle some JV tournaments, and I was undefeated on JV, so it felt like I had some potential, but could never get over the hump on varsity there. Sophomore year, I improved a bit. I was down to 189, and I think I was 14-19 my freshman or sophomore year, so I was able to get some good quality wins in the year, and made a run at regionals, almost made it to sectionals, but fell one match short. But it was a really good time. And then junior year, I had kind of a breakout season. I was up to 215. I only weighed like 200 pounds that whole year, but I ended up the year at 28-15. Got stuck at a regional with 2 guys that ended up, I believe, placing at state or near that. Really tough weight class that year, but I had some really good wins on the year. I started taking control of my matches a bit more. My freshman and sophomore year, I was a little more timid. Wasn't as aggressive as I could have been. And come junior year, I think I started the season out by winning by tech fall 15-0 to start the season, something like that. And so I really became a lot more aggressive and more prepared, and I put more time into it. The first couple of years, I was kind of just going through the motions, and my junior year, I decided, let's ramp it up a bit. So doing some extra work outside of the room, more conditioning and things like that, and I think it helped a lot, but couldn't quite make it beyond that regional tournament there. And then senior year, I had really, really high expectations for myself. I put in a lot of work over the summer, lifting and training, and thinking back on it, I wish I would have been able to get some more mat time back then, but it is what it is. A 3-sport athlete, so I was playing sports year round, and wrestling was definitely my number one sport, but not didn't go to any clubs or anything. Back in 2010, the club scene wasn't as big as it is now. But anyway, come in my first match, my senior year, I am going for a major, about to pin a kid. He flips me over. It's against Madison East, and about pins me. He doesn't pin me. I ended up winning the match. I think I got the major in that match, but wasn't exactly how I wanted to start my senior year. I think I was getting close to a tech fall in that match too. But anyway, win that match. Very next day, we're heading to Reedsburg for a dual tournament. And I'm sitting there. On the bus ride home from Madison East to Monroe. It's about an hour, and senior year, me and my buddy Josh are sitting there. We're just sitting there reflecting about our high school careers. It was a really cool moment, actually. Him and I used to go to these random youth wrestling tournaments together. I remember him and I would sit in the stands and play Game Boy sometimes, and it would really just, like, most of the other team, the youth team would go to a different tournament, and we'd go to some tournaments that I think helped us build some more confidence when we were kids. So maybe not as tough as some of the other tournaments that were going on, but helped us get a little bit better and build that confidence when we were kids. Anyway, Josh and I were sitting there really reflecting about our high school careers. He had missed the year before. He had torn his ACL, and so he really missed a big chunk of his high school career too. So we were talking about how just all the memories we had of growing up and wrestling, and I had kind of said, I've avoided major injuries in high school because I had battled some knee injuries in middle school, and the very next day, I really wish I wouldn't have said that. Wrestling the number one guy in the state, I had trained all off season to wrestle this guy. He had placed third in state the year before, and I was ready to go. Head out on the mat. We're wrestling for about 15 seconds. I go take a shot. My foot gets planted on the mat. He drives me over, and I rip up my entire ankle. Like, everything is torn in it. My second match of my senior year in the sport that I was the most passionate about. My dad, brother, and I would go to wrestling tournaments every single weekend from the time I was probably 7 or 8 years old. We would go to tournaments almost every weekend and support the Monroe High School wrestling team. And for me, I had lived and breathed wrestling, and this is my senior year. I'm ready to rock and roll. I want to make an impact. I'm wrestling the number one guy in the state, the guy I had trained against the entire off season. I was pumped. I was ready for this match. I was attacking this first 10 seconds of the match, and I'm already shooting. A couple of years before that, that wouldn't have happened at all. And so I ended up missing half of my senior year in wrestling due to this injury. And honestly, I came back too soon. I came back, and I really wanted to put it on for myself and for our school. I mean, like I said, being able to put that Monroe singlet on varsity for 4 years was something I will cherish forever. This town it means so much to me to live here and to have, and I had just have so much pride for it. And so I really wanted to get back on the mat to prove that I could do it. I could go out there and win matches, and I had wanted to make it to state and all that. And one of the biggest tournaments of the year is the Bi-State Classic up in La Crosse, and I had a goal of getting back on the mat to wrestle there. I had just missed out on placing the year before. It's a 60, 70 plus team tournament, one of the biggest tournaments in the state. And the year before, I had made it to the second day and ended up losing one round away from medaling. And that was tough. I was really hoping to make the stand there. Anyway, coming into senior year, I honestly thought I was going to make a really big impact that year. And there was a lot of guys that I felt like I could beat that were at the tournament. And I come in, could barely walk. I barely trained leading up to Bi-State, and I decided that was the tournament I was coming back. Coaches, they gave me the all clear to head back out there, and just didn't perform. I ended up wrestling the number one guy in D3 that year, Chad Johnson, my very first match at Bi-State, and took him down right away, but that was it. I couldn't shoot. That ankle was not ready, and I came back too soon, and that hindered me the rest of the year. I was not able to I didn't have confidence. I think that was the biggest thing for me is I didn't have the confidence in myself and my ankle to effectively wrestle how I needed to wrestle. And so that was a big struggle for me is that. And I made sectionals that year. I got paired up with Matt Turdeau, the guy I got hurt against. Very first match at sectionals. And then episode 3 guest Cody Endress was my second match at sectionals. And I'll just kind of run through those matches quickly here. So I knew as soon as I got the brackets for sectionals, I knew it was going to be a tough road to make it to state. The number 1 and number 2 guys in the state were on my same side. I had to beat one of them to have a chance to make it to state. I had to beat both of them to secure my spot at state. But there was a path backwards that I could have beat one of them and made it. Anyway, wrestling Matt Turdeau, the guy that I lost to, the guy I trained for all off season. He hadn't been taken down the entire year. He probably didn't even give up a point the entire year up to that point. And I remember my brother right before the match, he's like, "Go out and pancake him, put him on his back. Let's see what you got." Potentially last tournament of my life. Lay it all on the line. Let's see what happens. Well, Matt took a lazy shot, and I put him right on his back. Got some back points. He ended up getting out of it, and I had a 4-0 lead to start the match. And similar to Chad Johnson at Bi-State, it did not end well. He ended up coming back and pinning me in that first period. But the roar of the crowd was something I'll never forget. I guess this is my second to last match of my life, and I had an entire gym just erupt when the number 1 guy in the state gets put on his back. If I would have pinned him, I more than likely would have lost my next match to Cody, and he wouldn't have been able to make it to state. And so that was a pretty big moment for him to be able to come off his back and pin me and get over that. But that was a really big moment in my wrestling career. Some guys have big moments where they're winning state titles or making state tournament, and I just have small moments. Being a fairly average wrestler, I have some small moments where I made some small splashes, like taking Matt down, taking Chad Johnson down. I ended up wrestling Cody Endress to end my high school career. It was really kind of interesting because Cody and I had a big rivalry back in middle school. Him and I used to wrestle nearly every weekend, and always really close matches. He usually came out on top, but he definitely got a lot better in high school. I didn't progress quite as much as him, and he ended up being a three-time state place winner. But it was he definitely he had the upper hand in that match for sure. And but it was kind of cool to go out and wrestle a guy that I wrestled a ton, had really great respect for. So that was kind of my high school wrestling career. It was a blast to be able to put that Monroe singlet on and represent this town in really good fashion. I feel like, I always tried to represent myself as best as I could on and off the mat. And there were some times where I probably didn't represent myself as well as I should have, but, heat of the moment when you're 17 years old, I'll get to you. But I do know that every time I stepped on the mat wearing the Monroe singlet, I felt pride. And I felt like I had a community of incredible people following me and supporting me along the way. Off to baseball. I was a three-year varsity letter winner for baseball too. My freshman year, I played JV and it was a lot of fun. I throughout my early high school career, I was always bumped up to JV or varsity for every sport, and it was really cool to kind of be able to play sports with some people I hadn't normally played with, and so that was a lot of fun. And it was funny. My sophomore year, I played a little bit of JV, and fairly early on in the season, I ended up getting moved up to varsity. But one of my buddies, Matt, him and I used to have these competitions during games. For some reason, him and I both used to just crush the ball. We'd get doubles all the time, so we'd always have doubles competitions and see who would get the most doubles each game. And there'd be times where it felt like nearly every game it would be like I'd go 2 for 3, he'd go 3 for 4. We'd always bat. On JV, it was like he was 3 and I was 4, so he'd get on base and I'd get all the RBIs. I'd bring him in, so I was always cheering for him to get some doubles. But it was so much fun to be able to play with him and play with the team. And Matt and I actually got put on the traveling baseball team together in 6th grade, and so we'd warm up together, and just really good friends still to this day. I was the best man at his wedding, and it's really cool to see the relationships you build through sports in small towns. I've built so many great friendships, and still stay in touch with some folks from back then, and some I don't talk to that often, but if I run into them, it's like you haven't stopped talking in the last decade or so. So it's really cool to see that. My sophomore year, getting moved up to varsity was pretty challenging for me. I went from going 2 for 3 or 3 for 4 most games and playing third base to getting put on varsity mid-season, and really just being the DH. I didn't play much in the field. And for me, that was really tough. I needed to be involved in the game, and I honestly really loved playing defense. Played a lot of third base in my career, played some shortstop junior year too, but it was so much fun to be able to get moved up and get that challenge, because like I said, being on JV, I was doing pretty well, and so that the transition from JV to varsity midseason is really, really challenging. It was for me, at least. I think I ended up batting like 240 or 250 that year, and coming off cold off the bench, DHing was really, really tough. Situations, you just need to be aware of situations that are happening in the game and whatnot. But it was a really cool experience to be able to play with some of the guys I played football with, and I don't think any wrestlers were on the baseball team, but it was cool to kind of bring that full circle. And then sophomore year, I was a starting third baseman, or junior year, I was a starting third baseman for the baseball team. I did get slid over to shortstop for a little bit, so I played both third and short my junior year, and similar batting average, I think 240, somewhere in there. I felt like I had a lot of potential in baseball that I never lived up to. I was always really pretty good on defense, and had some power at the plate, but didn't really live up to the guy that got brought up as a sophomore. Senior year was we had a coaching change my senior year, and so it was a little bit different going through that coaching change, and I ended up starting most of the year at third base, split some time with Matt, actually playing third base, and it was a really challenging year for me. Honestly, it was. I had just wrapped up my wrestling season in a way I did not expect, and I really struggled with that. Letting go of being a wrestler was tough for me. It was kind of one of my core identities, actually, was being a wrestler, and so that was tough. And then just through the coaching change, that was challenging for me too. They were kind of heading in a different direction with the program, and so it was challenging to go through that. And splitting time is tough when you've been on varsity for 2 years and you're splitting time, but it's especially tough when you're splitting time with one of your best friends. that was really challenging to go through. Him and I, we both did decent our senior year. I think we both expected to play more and do more and really just have a really great years. Him and I had played together since 6th grade and had always been really successful up to that point. And so when your last hurrah on a baseball diamond is kind of split in time that way, it's really tough. So it is what it is. I wish my baseball career would have turned out a bit different, as baseball is. I love baseball. It's probably my favorite game. Wrestling is my favorite sport. Baseball is my favorite game. I think Shane Sparks, one of my former guests on the podcast here, said something like that too. It's being able to represent Monroe High School on the baseball diamond is really incredible for me too. To be able to do interviews for the radio and newspaper and know that you're representing your hometown school, and there's just so much pride there. I always felt just an incredible amount of pride for representing Monroe in all those ways. Mostly for me, it was through sports that I was representing my high school in my hometown. But moving on, after high school, I went to Edgewood College and didn't have a whole lot of Monroe folks head over to Edgewood. We had a few, but not a ton. There's other schools that definitely had a lot more Monroe students. So it was kind of nice for me to disconnect a bit from my hometown. You build your identity in your hometowns, and people know you and kind of judge you based on that. And my identity was definitely an athlete. And so I'm probably going to have an entire episode related to this at some point in time, but I really, really struggled with my identity as I moved out of high school and moved into college and didn't really know who I was. Definitely had some close friends, and girlfriend at the time, now wife, was definitely supportive of everything, but it was definitely challenging to leave your hometown. I grew up on a gravel road in the woods, and I was heading off to Madison, big city, to go to school for 4 years and figure out what I want to do with my life. And it's a big step. I ended up going into business management and doing really well in school. Definitely wish I would have been a little bit more involved when my first year in college, because I think that was the biggest struggle, biggest transition for me was that first year of college. But come sophomore year, I got involved, ended up becoming president of the Rotaract Club, which is a college version of Rotary. Ended up being a keynote speaker at a downtown Madison Rotary meeting in front of 500 executives. By the time I was graduating college, it was crazy. Never would have expected anything like that heading into college. But, it really all comes back to the hard work, the dedication that I built in my hometown of Monroe. I had so many incredible people around me growing up, from my parents and my brother, his wife, to extended family and coaches that I had throughout the years. I had so many incredible coaches that helped me navigate life when I was a kid, and just dedicated so much time to growing and developing me. I mean, coaching is such a selfless thing to do. These youth coaches and high school coaches, they don't do it for any sort of money or some may do it for accolades, but I mean, they're really truly focused on developing these kids. And not only, some of the coaches that I had around me weren't just focused on me as an athlete. They were focused on me as a human being and developing me into somebody who has great character, who's hardworking, who will do what's best for people. And really, honestly, I think I started developing that at a really young age, just due to my involvement in wrestling. I think that was the biggest driver in my life. There's so many things I learned about myself through the sport of wrestling and the things that were taught to me through it. I would never ever take that for granted. Just one of the best experiences of my life was being involved in that sport. But I had other coaches outside of just wrestling that made a huge impact in my life, and I wouldn't be where I am today without those people. And I had teachers too. I had some incredible teachers through the Monroe School District that helped me navigate through life. Just so many awesome relationships and experiences that I've had in this town. And I ended up graduating college, and my wife and I lived in Belleville for a year, and she worked in Monroe, I worked in Madison, and it made sense for us to live, halfway between, 30-minute drive for each of us. And it just never felt like home. We lived there for about a year, and it was a great place to live. Really liked the small town feel of it, but it wasn't Monroe. It wasn't where we wanted to raise our kids. It wasn't where we wanted to buy a house and learn how to be adults outside of being in college. And so we ended up living there for about a year and bought our house in Monroe. And that's history, man. I mean, we've been back in Monroe for 6.5 years, I think, is when we bought our house. I wouldn't trade it for the world. The majority of the time we've lived here, I've worked in Madison, and the last couple of years I've been working at home. But prior to that, I was driving to Madison every day, and it's worth it to me to be able to drive up and work in Madison and make an impact up there, but be able to come home to the place that shaped me into who I am. It's just great. I mean, I see people at the store, at Walmart, I haven't seen in a while. You chit chat with them, and it's like I said, those relationships you build when you're young. There's some people I can send a message to, and it's like we haven't talked for a couple of years, but it's like the relationship is still there. And so it's so cool to see that in a small town. I know for a fact I wouldn't have got that kind of thing if I lived in a bigger town. Monroe is it's unlike any other small town I've been to. The community here, there's so many incredible people in this community who give back, who will literally take their shirt off their back to help people, who just want the best for this community and these people. And it's just an incredible place. I'm so glad that I live here. I'm so glad my parents chose Monroe. My mom grew up in New Glarus, and my dad grew up in Judah, and for some reason they found a place on a gravel road. My dad literally moved the house from a different road to the spot on the gravel road in the woods, and the rest is really history there. I mean, the experience of living there, of being involved in multiple sports, to just being a part of this community has been just incredible. I wouldn't want to live any other way, honestly. I don't think, I had dreams at some point in my life of moving away and doing something else, and maybe even exploring different states and things like that. But honestly, Monroe is home. Monroe will always be home. Even if I do end up moving away at some point in time, this place will always be home to me. It's always going to have a special place in my heart. So yeah, I'm just honored to have represented Monroe High School for my time when I was there. I'm honored to host this podcast. I'm really trying to showcase Wisconsinites, but I've had a huge emphasis on Monroe and Greene County. Part of it is due to the listeners out there. I have a lot of listeners around the area, but it's what I'm passionate about too. I'm passionate about this area. I've met so many great people from different walks of life through this podcast, but I've also met some really great people that I didn't know from this community. And so I'm just excited to continue to tell these stories to showcase my hometown and the great state of Wisconsin, and just the incredible people we have right here in our backyard here in Monroe. So thank you for listening to this episode of Wisco Legacy. It's a bit different. It's me talking about my experience in my hometown, and ever since we've moved back, it's been so positive. Like I said, I don't think I would ever want to live anywhere else other than Monroe. So thank you all for listening and tuning into this episode of Wisco Legacy. Hoping to do a little bit more content that's kind of similar to what we're doing here, telling some stories, and maybe get some guests on to talk about some stories we have here. But it's really exciting. I just want to thank everybody for supporting Wisco Legacy. It's been a really fun side passion project for me to work on. And if anybody ever wants to be a guest, or wants to or knows anybody that would want to be involved in Wisco Legacy, want to write some articles or help showcase Monroe or this state, just reach out, DM me on social media, or reach out to me at Cory@WiscoLegacy.com. Just having fun, just talking into a mic and meeting incredible people and helping them tell their stories. So it's so much fun. I really, really appreciate everybody who tunes into this. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe on YouTube, and also rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And follow us on social media at Wisco Legacy. That would help us out a lot. So again, thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Wisco Legacy. This is my hometown story.